There was a time when snowmobiling wasn't just a hobby, it was an obsession. Riders counted down the days until winter, dealerships were packed, and every weekend fresh tracks covered frozen lakes and winding backwoods trails. Owning a sled wasn't just about getting from point A to point B. It was freedom, adrenaline, and adventure, all packed into one roaring machine. If you had a snowmobile, you weren't just a rider, you were part of a culture. But something changed. Snowmobile dealerships are shutting down left and right. An industry that once thrived is now in serious trouble. So what happened? Was it just a few bad winters? Or is there something much bigger at play? Something the industry doesn't want you to know? Here's the harsh reality. It's not just the weather. Snowmobile prices have skyrocketed, making them harder for the average person to afford. We're almost at 1,000 subscribers. Do you enjoy the video? Your support means the world to us. Help us grow and hit that subscribe button. Major manufacturers are pulling out. Even legendary brands like Yamaha have thrown in the towel. And behind the scenes, dealerships are being crushed by economic forces they have no control over. So what does this mean for the future of snowmobiling? Is the sport dying, or is there still hope? Let's break it all down and uncover the real story behind the collapse of snowmobile dealerships. There was a time when winter meant winter. If you lived in the northern US or Canada, you didn't have to wonder if there'd be snow. You knew there'd be snow. Deep powder, frozen lakes, and months of solid riding. But now, that guarantee is gone. Warmer winters, unpredictable snowfall, and shorter seasons are hitting the snowmobiling world hard. Just look at the 2023-24 season. Many parts of the Midwest and Northeast barely got enough snow to ride. Places that usually fire up their trails in November didn't see anything until January, if they saw snow at all. Minnesota, Wisconsin, and even parts of Canada had some of their lowest snowfall totals on record. Trails sat empty, riders stayed home, and dealerships struggled to sell sleds. And the numbers? They don't lie. U.S. snowmobile sales dropped nearly 3% in just 1 year because of poor winter conditions. That might not sound like a big deal, but in an industry where margins are razor thin, a few bad seasons can be devastating. No snow means no sales, and no sales mean dealerships start shutting down. And this isn't just a fluke. Climate experts warn that winters are getting shorter, snowfalls are becoming less reliable, and this trend isn't reversing anytime soon. Snowmobile dealers are stuck with unsold inventory, forced to slash prices just to break even. Some can't survive at all. Because really, who's going to spend $15,000 on a sled when they don't even know if they'll get a decent season to ride? Riders feel it too. People who used to upgrade every few years are holding on to their old machines, hoping for a good winter instead of expecting one. Some are getting out of the sport entirely, selling their sleds and picking up hobbies that don't rely on the weather. For an industry that only exists because of snow, this is a serious crisis. And the worst part? This is just the beginning. If you've looked at the price of a new snowmobile recently, you probably had to do a double take. What used to be a fun, accessible winter sport is now a serious financial commitment. The days of grabbing a brand new sled for under $5,000? Gone. Today, high-performance models easily hit $15,000 to $20,000. And that's before you factor in a trailer, gear, insurance, and maintenance. For a lot of riders, that price tag is just too much. Wages haven't kept up with inflation, and with the cost of everything going up, gas, groceries, housing, dropping a small fortune on a snowmobile isn't exactly realistic anymore. And it's not just the sleds. Trail permits, fuel, and parts have all gotten more expensive, making snowmobiling a costly hobby, even after you buy the machine. And guess who's feeling the squeeze? Dealerships. When sales slow down, dealerships scramble to stay afloat. Many offer discounts, financing deals, or even take losses just to move inventory. But there's only so much they can do. Small, family-run dealerships are getting hit especially hard. They just can't compete with massive power sports retailers that buy in bulk and slash prices. And financing? That's another roadblock. With high interest rates, monthly payments on a new sled are brutal. Some buyers aren't even qualifying for loans, forcing them to either go used or skip the purchase altogether. To make things worse, manufacturers keep raising prices while offering fewer dealer incentives. That leaves dealerships stuck between a rock and a hard place. Either jack up prices and risk losing customers, or absorb the costs and make almost no profit. Neither option is sustainable. The result? Slower sales, unsold inventory, and dealerships struggling to keep the lights on. Some have downsized or shifted focus to selling ATVs and motorcycles instead. Others have had no choice but to shut down for good. Snowmobiling used to be a sport for the everyday rider, but as prices keep rising, it's becoming a luxury, and that's bad news for the dealerships that rely on a steady stream of customers to survive. Even if you want to buy a new snowmobile, actually getting one hasn't been easy. Over the past few years, major manufacturers have faced massive production issues, causing frustrating delays, shortages, and headaches for both riders and dealerships. One of the biggest culprits? Supply chain disasters. Ever since COVID-19 flipped the world upside down, manufacturers have struggled to get their hands on essential parts, engine components, electronic chips, even basic materials. Shipping delays and factory shutdowns meant that dealerships placed orders months in advance, only to wait forever for their sleds to arrive. And by the time they did, many customers had already lost interest or moved on to other hobbies. But it's not just supply chain problems anymore. Some manufacturers are actually slowing down production on purpose. Not because they can't build sleds, but because demand just isn't what it used to be. Take Arctic Cat, for example. In early 2024, they announced indefinite production shutdowns at 2 major factories in Minnesota. Why? A shrinking market and economic uncertainty. If fewer people are buying new snowmobiles, there's no reason to keep pumping them out at the same pace. For dealerships, this is a huge problem. If they don't have inventory, they can't make sales. But even when they do get new sleds, they're often so expensive that customers hesitate to buy. It's a vicious cycle, one that's forcing more and more dealerships to shut their doors for good. With manufacturers scaling back and dealerships struggling to survive, the snowmobile industry is shrinking from the inside out. And if Yamaha, one of the biggest names in the game, decided to pull the plug on their snowmobile division, what does that say about the future of the sport? For snowmobile dealerships, it's been a brutal few years. Bad winters, skyrocketing prices, production slowdowns, and even Yamaha pulling out. It's created the perfect storm. Many dealerships have already shut down, and the ones that are still standing, they're barely hanging on. Just look at what's happening in Minnesota. Leo's South in Lakeville ordered 66 snowmobiles for the season, expecting solid sales. But thanks to a terrible winter and rising costs, they only sold 11. The rest, sitting in the showroom, collecting dust. That's thousands of dollars locked up in unsold inventory. And for a dealership, that's the kind of hit that can shut down a business fast. And it's not just happening in places with bad winters. Even in areas where the snow is still reliable, sales aren't what they used to be. More riders are skipping new sleds entirely, hunting for cheaper used models instead. Others, they're quitting the sport altogether. Some dealerships have tried to pivot, focusing more on ATVs, UTVs, and motorcycles, things they can sell year-round. But not everyone has that option. The ones that specialized in snowmobiles, they've been hit the hardest, left with 2 choices: adapt or close down. Larger power sports retailers have some advantages, offering aggressive financing and bulk deals that smaller dealerships simply can't compete with. But even they're struggling. Dealers are being forced to cut margins to unsustainable levels just to move inventory, and some are relying on service and accessories just to keep the doors open. For riders, fewer dealerships mean fewer options, not just for buying a sled, but for getting parts, repairs, and expert advice. When a local dealership shuts down, the nearest option might be hours away, making it even harder for enthusiasts to maintain their machines. And here's the thing, when a dealership shuts down, it's not just a business that disappears, it's a community hub. It's the place where riders met up, got advice, and stayed connected to the sport. And once those places are gone, they're not coming back. The snowmobile industry is at a crossroads. Climate change, skyrocketing prices, production slowdowns, and major brands pulling out have put dealerships in serious trouble. Some have adapted, but many haven't survived, leaving fewer places for riders to buy, repair, and service their sleds. So what happens next? Can snowmobiling survive, or is it slowly fading into history? The truth is, unless something changes, better winters, industry innovation, or a major price correction, the decline will only get worse. And if dealerships keep closing, snowmobiling as we know it won't disappear overnight, but it might never be the same again. For decades, snowmobiling was a way of life for riders across North America. It was more than just a sport. It was a community, a culture, and a winter tradition passed down through generations. But as costs rise and access shrinks, many are being pushed out. New riders can't afford to get started, and longtime enthusiasts are questioning if they can keep going. Manufacturers and dealerships have a choice: adapt or fade away. Can they find ways to make sleds more affordable? Will new technology like electric snowmobiles change the game? Or are we witnessing the slow decline of an industry that once thrived? One thing is certain: snowmobiling is facing its toughest challenge yet. And unless something big changes, the next generation of riders might not get to experience the sport at all.